Hello everyone, and welcome to the Daily Signal's Top 10. And today we're counting down the top news stories of the week, many of which have gone either misreported or underreported in the mainstream media. I'm Jenny Maltabano, and here with me to break all of this down are my colleagues at the Daily Signal, Jarrett Stetman and Daniel Davis. Thank you for being with me today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, first up, Sarah Huckabee Sanders had a withering response to Hillary Clinton, who is back at it again. She gave a very controversial speech in India that's getting a lot of media attention.
If you look at the map of the United States, there's all that red in the middle where Trump won. I win the coasts, I win, Illinois and Minnesota, places like that. But what the map doesn't show you is that I won the places that represent 2/3 of America's gross domestic product. So I won the places that are optimistic, diverse, dynamic, moving forward, and his whole campaign, Make America Great Again, was looking backwards. You didn't like black people getting rights, you don't like women, getting jobs, you don't want to, see that Indian American succeeding more than you are. Whatever your problem is, I'm going to solve it.
I think that's a perfect example of why Hillary Clinton is not in the White House. She is completely disconnected from the American public, and certainly I think shows her disdain for the millions and millions of Americans who came out and voted and supported President Trump and still support him today.
Now, I'm sure many of you have seen Hillary Clinton's remarks, but a lot of you might not have seen Sarah Huckabee Sanders' response. A lot of people have been very offended by this, Jared. What did you make about Clinton's remarks?
Yeah, talk about bitter clinger. I mean, that's what I thought of when I saw this comment from Hillary Clinton. And she's really doubling down on her whole deplorables comment that she made during the campaign. And it's really an incredible thing. I feel that disdain for the voters is never a winning message, and she shows us in spades, which is funny because she's the head of a party called the Democratic Party. This is a party for the people. And it's interesting to see Hillary Clinton go with this kind of disdainful message toward a certain sect of voters, a far cry from Franklin Roosevelt talking about the forgotten man, a phrase that President Donald Trump has appropriated. And it's interesting, this is a party of Andrew Jackson, who recently had a birthday this week, who's always, standing up for the little guy in America and for the forgotten individuals. And here we have a person who heads a party with these very elitist statements and really insulting to regular Americans.
Now, Daniel, a lot of Democrats now are saying, why doesn't she kind of retreat into the shadows? Because she seems to be more of a hindrance than a help to these candidates. What do you think about that?
No, I think it's definitely true. Any association with Hillary Clinton hurts candidates who are running now. So they're distancing themselves from her, as well as Nancy Pelosi, kind of the older party establishment. But it's been over a year since the election. She's not moving on. I think it shows that she holds a grudge, like Jarrett said, against the voters. And I think that vindicates women who didn't vote for her, because it shows that this is the kind of person we don't want. Someone who feels so entitled to the presidency that she believed all her life that she deserved to be the president. That's exactly the wrong kind of person to elect.
Right, and I know a lot of women are saying, well, my husband didn't tell me how to vote. That's certainly how I felt, and a lot of people in the building have felt.
Yeah.
It was very offensive to hear.
It's insulting.
We'll see where she pops up next. All right, on to number 9. Nancy Pelosi is back in the news saying that the wall is just too high. Take a look.
I think the border, did you see it? How high it is, and the rest of the president think the wall? I mean, really? In a civilized society, we'd do something like that? As obnoxious as it is? That's a community there with a border running through it. Okay, we have a difference of opinion on that. But a wall that big, separating people, I mean, really? This is a big wall.
All right, well, first crumbs, and now the wall was too high. Jarrett, what do you think about the wall?
This was just a bizarre statement, quite frankly. I mean, it's a little bit incoherent in her answer. I mean, the idea that a wall is too high, well, it's supposed to be effective. It's supposed to do its job. I mean, look, if she believes that we shouldn't have a wall, I mean, that's a legitimate argument from the other side, that she doesn't believe in maybe U.S. sovereignty, that she believes in unrestrained immigration. But to say that, well, the wall is too high. That's just very bizarre. I mean, some of the problems that we've had on the border, there are sections of the wall, but they're not doing the job. They're not actually keeping people out. In some cases, just a chain link fence. It's other things. So, yeah, this wall is going to be very high. It's supposed to be effective and do its job, which is to keep illegal immigrants out.
Daniel, do you think she should have weighed in on this at all if this was going to be her angle?
No, I mean, you don't say the wall is too high. The point of the wall is to be high and to block people from coming over. So it's like she was basically saying, well, at least put a ladder on the side so that people can hop over. No, I mean, if you're against the wall, that's a position to have. But otherwise, don't criticize the wall for being a good wall.
It certainly did not make a ton of sense, and it's definitely getting some traction. And now on to number 8. A month after making controversial remarks on The View, Joy Behar has finally issued a public apology to many Christians who were offended when she compared Mike Pence's Christianity to a mental illness. Now, she did call Mike Pence, and she apologized privately, but it took her a full month to apologize publicly.
You and I know that criticism comes with public life. But I felt it was important that I defend the faith of tens of millions of Americans against that kind of slander. And I did so. And, I give Joy Behar a lot of credit. She picked up the phone. She called me. She was very sincere. And she apologized. And one of the things my faith teaches me is grace. Forgive as you've been forgiven. So does mine, but I'm not as good at it as you. Well, look, but I said to Joy, of course I forgive you. That's part of my faith experience. But I did encourage her, and I'm still encouraging her, to use the forum of that program or some other public forum to apologize to tens of millions of Americans who were equally offended.
So I think Vice President Pence is right. I was raised to respect everyone's religious faith, and I fell short of that. I sincerely apologize for what I said.
Daniel, what did you make about her delayed apology? Did you think it was appropriate?
I'm just glad that she did apologize. I think it was good. It was good of her to call Mike Pence and then to go on TV. I know there was a lot of outcry, and so there was some pressure for her to do it. But I think she deserves credit for doing that, and I hope it'll lead to more understanding. I think what this exposed was that some folks like her are just completely detached from religious people, and they don't understand religious experience, even when that's extremely common in this country. And so I just hope that this can lead to greater understanding between people in this country who don't share the same beliefs.
Now, Jarrett, why do you think there is a double standard about faith in the media, the mainstream media? Media Research Center had to start a grassroots movement, essentially, to get people to call ABC and their sponsors.
Yeah, I think there really is kind of a liberal bubble in these kind of media environments that we're seeing in a lot of places, certainly in places. Look, The View has mostly very liberal guests. They bring on very few conservatives. I think it's kind of disappointing. And good job for Meghan McCain, kind of the one conservative in the bunch who's actually asked some tough questions to some of the people there. But look, I think there's a big divide between the culture of average Americans and what we've seen from the elite media. So a comment like, well, Christians are mentally ill people, maybe in some of the circles that she runs in, that seems like, well, that's something I could just throw out there and maybe people will laugh. But to a lot of Americans, that seemed like a very offensive statement. And so, yeah, I'm glad she finally did say, oh, I'm sorry to the people who I disparaged because of their religious views. I mean, we hear this all the time, especially from people on the left. We shouldn't disparage people because of their religious views. Here we have somebody who did this on TV, on air. It's good that she apologized to Mike Pence, and it's good, that she issued this broader apology. But, unfortunately, we're going to probably see more of this from the media. Just there's such a disconnect between religious Americans and what we see in the elites in Hollywood and the media. It's just a fact of life.
Now, as Brent Bozell said, she apologized, so we accept it, but it certainly is very, very eye-opening. And he said something along the lines of, it's given The View a black eye, so we'll have to keep an eye on it. Now on to number 7. This Wednesday, March 14th, was National School Walkout Day. Students across the country walked out of school in protest over the Parkland shootings. I actually went down to the White House for the Daily Signal and covered this. There were probably about 1,000 students there. We spoke with several of them. Let's watch.
Because maybe some teachers are they don't like one student, and after a while they'll probably get mad, and then they'll want to do something to the student with a gun, and I think.
Now, Daniel, the media is definitely portraying one side of this very strongly, and we've seen conservative students or even students who just want to have a larger discussion about the Second Amendment. They're being pressured and sometimes bullied. What do you make of this, and what advice would you give to them? Yeah,
when I see pictures and video of a bunch of students together protesting, I do not believe that that students in this country are in lockstep the way that it appears and the way that the media is encouraging us to believe. There were some stories this week even, students, there's one conservative student who brought a sign that just, said, guns don't kill people, people kill people. A basic conservative message. The principal came and escorted him out of the group and threatened to put him in a police car. And then another student who just wanted to stay in class got suspended for not protesting. So this raises serious free speech and First Amendment questions, and it shows that I think it shows that there's probably a lot of pressure behind the scenes to conform to what the schools and the media want. And students need to be able, at the very least, to not participate and then to actually say what they think.
Jarrett, what do you make about this?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot of people are saying, well, aren't these students brave for doing what they're doing? Well, it'd be actually more brave if you're the one student in the class who decides, I don't think I'm going to participate in this. So, there's definitely a lot of course, media interest in this. There are a lot of activist groups involved. And I think to a certain extent, this thing was pushed as, this is a memorial for those who were killed in Parkland, which would seem like a very, obviously a worthwhile thing. But it really just became an anti-Second Amendment, a pro-gun control kind of protest. It's something that has definitely a large amount of organization and that these schools participate in. I mean, we have public schools around the country that are essentially turning into activist organizations with the students. What if you are pro-Second Amendment? Are you going to be alienated in these environments at a public school? Are you being forced essentially to participate in what the media wants from this whole thing? So there's a lot of stuff. And look, I believe that young people have the right to protest. They have the right to have their voices heard. We don't necessarily have to listen to what they say, but that is a valuable voice. But a lot of this I just feel is very much staged, and it's staged for a very specific reason by activist groups who have wanted to undermine the Second Amendment for years, and they're using a lot of these kids as kind of, puppets in this game, and that's an unfortunate thing.
These kids certainly deserve to be heard on both sides. All right, now on to number 6. First the moon, now Mars. President Trump has some thoughts on space exploration. Take a look.
We are finally going to lead again. You see what's happening. You see the rockets going up left and right. You haven't seen that for a long time. Very soon we're going to Mars. You wouldn't have been going to Mars if my opponent won. That I can tell you. You wouldn't even be thinking about it. Space is a warfighting domain, just like the land, air, and sea. We may even have a space force. Develop another one. Space Force. We have the Air Force, we'll have the Space Force.
So Jarrett, now Putin wants to go to Mars. This story sounds very familiar. Why don't you break it down for us?
Yeah, it does have a very 1960s vibe to it, Cold War-esque. But look, I think it's interesting because President Trump got criticized a little bit for his space troops comment that he made at a speech in California, which, look, let's be honest. Great powers like China and Russia, they don't exactly like the world order that has, America kind of at the top, and they are competing in space, not just economically, but militarily as well. It is necessary for a country like the United States to be thinking about this from a national security standpoint, to have, space troops or whatever you want to call it. It is important that the president thinks about this stuff as, space becomes an area in which, great powers compete.
Daniel, what are your thoughts on space exploration?
Well, I think it's great that we're getting back into space exploration. During the Obama years, NASA was sort of gutted and its mission was really altered. And now I think it's good to get back into space exploration, particularly for the, just the educational benefits to inspire kids to get into space. At least in the 90s, that was a thing for us. So I think that's good. And I think it's also nice, to have some good, to understand Russia as a competitor insofar as they are being kind of a menace on the world stage, for us to kind of remember that, the Cold War, it's over, but there might be sort of a new Cold War. So it's kind of like a return to form, I think, So nice to have some national spirit in the race to Mars.
It'll definitely be something to keep our eye on. All right, on to number 5. In some more sad news, Stephen Hawking, the famous physicist, passed away this week. We have a clip of him at the White House. Take a look.
Professor Stephen Hawking was a brilliant man and a mediocre student when he lost his balance and tumbled down a flight of stairs. Diagnosed with a rare disease and told he had just a few years to live, he chose to live with new purpose. And happily, in the 4 decades since, he has become one of the world's leading scientists. His work in theoretical physics, which I will not attempt to explain further here, has advanced our understanding of the universe. His popular books have advanced the cause of science itself. From his wheelchair, he's led us on a journey to the farthest and strangest reaches of the cosmos. In so doing, he has stirred our imagination and shown us the power of the human spirit here on Earth.
We just saw a clip of President Obama giving Stephen Hawking a Medal of Honor. Daniel, how big is this loss?
It's definitely a loss for the scientific community, and he's a unique figure because he's not just the leader in his field. He's one of those once-in-a-generation figures who does lead his field but also reaches a mass audience and gains a public following. And so he did that really over the last several decades despite being debilitated for so many decades. And so I think we should remember him not just for his contributions to cosmology, but as an inspirational figure who can show us what the human spirit is capable of. If there was anyone in the world who could sort of throw in the towel and give up and blame it on his circumstances, it was Stephen Hawking, because of his debilitating Lou Gehrig's disease. But he achieved unprecedented things, and I think it's just a person to admire for that, and to remember that whatever our circumstances are at any point in life, that we can have a very big impact on people.
Yeah, he certainly had a big impact. Jared, what do you think his legacy will be?
Yeah, I mean, he put a very public face on what was very serious science. I mean, everybody knows the Stephen Hawking's voice, which of course had to be done essentially by a computer program for years. Everybody knows what he looked like, how he sounded, and I think a lot of those scientific lessons he gave to people all over the world, I think really stuck with people, and it shows that even if you have severe disabilities like he had in a previous era, he might not have been able to do these things without incredible technological advancements. This shows the value of human life, even somebody who is incredibly disabled. I think that's why I'm such a firm believer in life. Why I'm personally pro-life, because I see the value that, look, even if somebody has a horrible disability, they can contribute so much to mankind through their work. So I think that and beyond just the physics and just being a physicist, I think that is his legacy.
I think that's a great point. Thank you. All right, next up we have Russia back in the news. This has certainly been underreported. It seems kind of like the making of a Bond movie. Jarrett, can you break down what's going on?
So this is quite crazy. This is the Russians, so the first time since really the Cold War, the end of the Cold War, poisoned an ex-spy and his daughter in the UK, which is, frankly, it's unprecedented. I mean, it sounds like something like out of a James Bond movie or something you'd see in a spy movie, which of course has very serious repercussions. I mean, look, the UK is a sovereign nation. That Russia basically reached out its hands and poisoned these ex-spies is a really dramatic thing. And we just saw a letter from Senator Ben Sasse and Senator John McCain saying that NATO needs to take an immediate action to address this issue. This is a very serious thing and shows what Russia is trying to do. I mean, they may have lost a lot of power at the end of the Cold War, but they feel like that they are back on the world stage, that they're influencing events, and they want to show everybody that they're still in charge. And I think that it has a great impact on U.S. foreign policy and the policy of the free world, quite frankly, right now.
Now, Daniel, Sarah Huckabee Sanders had a very strong statement at a press conference. She said, of course, the U.S. stands with our greatest ally. What do you think about our response so far?
Well, the sanctions that have been levied against Putin and some actors, not just in response to the poisoning, that's part of it, but also in response to all of the meddling that the FBI has uncovered. I think it's definitely an appropriate and needed response. You can't let that sort of thing happen without any response. And we have to remember that the meddling is not the same as collusion. These collusion controversies that you see on CNN all the time, That's different from meddling, which is Russia on its own trying to get involved. And the FBI has shown evidence that they did get involved in the U.S. election process, in the political process, and tried to emphasize the extremes in our system to try to sow chaos. So that's the same kind of information warfare that is the old Soviet game, and we have to remember that this is not a new enemy, and we have to take it seriously. Yep. And it looks like Trump administration is doing that.
It's good to see that they are taking it seriously. Next up, number 3, Gina Haspel could be the first female director of the CIA, but she's facing some serious criticism. Is there a double standard? Here's what the mainstream media has to say.
Is that disqualifying?
It might be. She clearly presided over a massive illegal operation that violated both the U.S. law and international law. I'm sure those orders came down from above her, but that is no excuse.
We'll look at her past record, but her commitment moving forward, it's an issue of concern.
Jarrett, what do you make of this? Is there a double standard?
Well, I mean, talk about fake news. I mean, this ProPublica story, which, in fairness, they did have a major correction to this story that, it was incredible. CNN's Brian Stelter actually said, well, look how wonderfully transparent this is from ProPublica. No, the issue was they ran with an incredibly botched story that basically sparked hundreds of op-eds, other news stories. We had Senator McCain and Senator Paul, attacking this person, essentially saying, oh, she headed this torture program, which she didn't. So yeah, this is an incredibly, it shows, sometimes we have an irresponsible media, and, I do hope they get called out for this. And unfortunately, this narrative, a lot of people, this is the first time they've heard this about this woman. That's what they're going to think into the future. So, fake news has repercussions down the line. Even if it gets corrected, a lot of people are going to believe that initial story.
Yeah, fake news is very dangerous. Daniel, what do you think about this?
I think the Democrats should be happy that this is someone who's been in the CIA for a long time. It's not some, quote unquote political hack who's being put in at the top. This is someone who knows the CIA, who's been involved for a long time, a career person, and someone who will run the place well. So I think this should be a no-brainer for everyone.
I know, I kind of feel like this should be applauded. The Trump administration is placing another very qualified female into a high-level role, but of course the mainstream media has a problem with it. All right, number 2, it's March Madness time. We want to hear who's in your bracket. Guys, who do you have?
Well, I have, at the end of the day, I have UVA winning this whole thing because my wife went to UVA Law School, and, they're an excellent team. I've seen them play a little bit this year. I was a little disappointed with their loss to Virginia Tech earlier this year, but I'm pulling for them because, some school spirit there. So that's my team to win this whole thing.
Okay. Daniel?
So I've got UVA going to the final, but Texas Tech upsetting everyone along the way and beating them in the final. Okay. No bias whatsoever, even though my dad went there.
Texan.
I'm hoping for a Texas team too. Texans have to stick together. All right, last but not least, happy St. Patrick's Day. Check out, this is how Speaker Ryan celebrated earlier this week.
May the winds of fortune sail you. May you sail the gentlest sea. May it always be the other guy or gal who says, this drink's on me. Sláinte. Sláinte.
All right, so Daniel and I got the green memo. Jarrett did not, but it's okay.
My mom would have a lot to say about this. She would get up on the mornings of St. Patrick's Day because I wasn't yet wearing green, and she would give me a pinch. So this is for my mom. I blew it. Sorry, Mom.
It's okay. What are y'all doing for St. Patrick's Day?
Gonna actually have brunch with some college friends and then go to the Museum of the Bible. So, and wear green, of course.
Of course.
And I think I'll have some corned beef. Now, I must admit, I don't have any Irish heritage, but I'm going to have a little corned beef. I'll probably, have a Guinness or something along those lines because, of course, Ireland. So, I'll do a little something for St. Patrick's Day. You gotta do something.
You have to celebrate. All right, thank you both, and thank you all for joining us this week. We'll see you back here next week, same time, same place. Have a great weekend, a great St. Patrick's Day. We'll see you next time. Thank you.